What's up guys, my name's Alek Morelock. I drive in the Drift Indy Street League series in real life, and I'm also responsible for cars that you guys are going to be driving in the Street League Virtual series. I wanted to put together a quick little guide for you guys to help dial in your setup, get these cars feeling as good as they possibly can, or as good as I think that they can based on my experience playing on sims for thousands of hours and turning plenty of laps in real life as well. So this is going to apply to T300 users as well as Logitech users. I have much more experience with the T300. However, I have used Logitech wheels and have spent some time talking with Logitech users to try and figure out how to help optimize the feel on those wheels. If you use a direct drive wheel or a higher end Fanatec wheel, some of the stuff that applies to my wheel will be more likely to apply to your setup. However, that always takes some dialing in, and I don't have a direct drive wheel to test with. Without further ado, let's jump in. All right, as you can see, I am now in Content Manager. I've got the Street League Virtual S14 pulled up. We don't need to worry about that right now. So the first thing we're gonna do, first and foremost, you need to have Content Manager, and if you don't, get it. We're gonna go up to our settings tab here, and we're gonna start in the Assetto Corsa section and go right down to controls. So you can literally pause this video at any point in time and just straight copy my settings, but I'm gonna go through each one really quickly and give you a little bit of an understanding of what they all do. So your gain is the overall strength of your force feedback. I always keep mine at 80%. I don't necessarily know why. You can adjust the strength per vehicle in game, so you can really set this to whatever you like, whatever gets you closest by default on all the cars you use. Your filter, I always keep it at 0. Your filter literally filters out some of the small sharp details that might come through your wheel. That's personal taste. I keep it low because it doesn't interfere with the rotation of the wheel that way. And there's a few settings that one of the main things that we want to do is avoid interference with the rotation of the wheel so that you can transition smoothly and quickly if you need to. Your minimum force is literally the minimum amount of force that will be applied when there's force going to your wheel. T300 or a direct drive wheel, you want to keep this very low. On a Logitech wheel, I'd keep it 5% to maybe 15%. Road effects, so your curve effect, road effect, slip effect, and ABS, these are all actually fake effects. I keep these pretty low. They're nice when you're racing for some added detail. However, they can interfere with the rotation of your wheel. So if you've got a slow rotating wheel like a Logitech, you definitely want to keep these low, if not 0%. Miscellaneous, you can leave these unchecked. FFB skip steps, you can leave that at 0. Hardware lock, I keep this on because my wheel rotates more than 900 degrees by default, so I like to limit it. In your post-processing section, your center boost, gain, and range can be at 0. Now, if you feel like your wheel is really weak when you're driving straight, you can always boost that, but I would recommend leaving it at 0. Low speed FFB reduction, this is personal preference. You can leave it at default. If you don't want to leave it at default, mess with it, see what you feel. It literally is just the strength of your force feedback under the low speed threshold. Experimental, I check that. The only thing I use is the damper. I like a little bit of damper. 15% is about as high as I go with it. Otherwise, it can start to slow your wheel down. And then once you've got these settings dialed in, we're gonna move over to your CSP FFB tweaks. Now this section is really important because it does some powerful stuff and it's a little bit on the experimental side. So you can see that I'm actually using some of these settings, but the basic box is unchecked. You can check this box, however, in the cars that use McPherson strut suspension like the S chassis cars and the E36, this will decrease your overall force, so you'll have to make up for that in game, which is easy enough. You just increase your force by about 25 or 30% and it fixes that. I leave the McPherson strut FFB adjustment checked because my cars do actually use the unusual configuration of the struts. That's a little bit more accurate, especially with steering geometry that is replicated based off of real stuff. This allows it to be a little bit more lifelike. Disable FFB, that's your force feedback during your loading screens. You probably don't want that. The physically accurate gyro implementation, this basically just replicates the inertia of your wheels rotating and how that affects your steering feel. You can leave that on or off. It's just a feel thing. Prefer it, keep it on. If you don't, turn it off. It doesn't hurt or help anything in my opinion. Your range compression, so this is actually directly what your basic checkbox here turns on and off. So this basic thing doesn't turn all this stuff off. it actually turns your range compression on and off. I don't like the range compression on a Logitech wheel. You might, because it will make the wheel feel a little bit more responsive. So play with that. It's gonna be more noticeable the higher you boost that range compression. So test that out and see how you like it. But in general, this is how I'd recommend to leave it. And the real steering forces, if you have a direct drive wheel, I would assume that you'll probably want to use this. I've tested it with a non-direct drive wheel. It's not meant for a belt-driven wheel like this, but it actually works pretty nicely. I literally just keep it off so that I don't accidentally break my wheel, because it does make it feel a little bit sharper. And that's really it. So we're going to jump into a quick practice session so I can show you how to adjust your force feedback in game. All right, now that we are in game, you can see that I've got my pedals app up here, and this is going to be important as you adjust your force feedback strength, because some people are going to like heavy force feedback. Some people might not want it to be so heavy, but I'm going to use this as an example. So you can see I've got my overall strength on the force feedback controller, which you can find in your apps on the right hand side here. My overall strength right now is at 120, and it will be at 100% by default. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my pedals app, which is also found over here in your apps. This fourth box here that has the little gray bar, this is actually showing you the forces that are coming through your wheel. And that bar is going to fill up more and more depending on how much of your wheel's strength it's actually using. Once it fills and turns red, that means that it's clipping and your wheel is actually exerting all the force that it can possibly exert and is unnecessarily heavy and is actually losing a lot of detail. So you can see that I'm just driving slowly and it's heavy enough that it's starting to clip. If I hit a bump, those details are clipping. So I'm gonna turn my force feedback strength down to where that bar gets just about full when those stronger details are coming through, but not to the point that it clips. So I'm just driving over bumps to see what happens. I don't really want to see red. I don't like my wheel to be overly heavy anyways. We drive cars that have power steering in real life most of the time, and honestly, if you've got your wheel cranked up, it's probably heavier than your real car. So at this point, I've got mine at about 90%, and for reference, in my Thrustmaster control panel, my actual wheel is set to 100%, so I'm getting all of the available strength from the wheel. That's going to give me the most headroom before it starts clipping. I can pretty much say that it's not too heavy or too light. If I actually drift, my wheel spins nice and fast. I'm getting plenty of feedback, but it's not overly heavy. No matter what I do here, you're not seeing any clipping, even when I hit the wall. So that means that's about where you want it. I'd recommend playing with that yourself. You know, if you're used to having your wheel set real heavy and maybe it doesn't feel that great, try this out, see if it feels any better for you. I wanted to keep this short and simple and easy to follow. I wanted to also make sure that there's a little bit of understanding on what some of these settings do while I was at it. I don't want this video to be long-winded. I want it to be simple and easy to follow and quick. I want you to get in and drive as much as you possibly can. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them if I can. Feel free to ask questions in the Discord as well. I'm in there. I'm pretty active in there, and I'm happy to help if I can. See you guys later.